Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting for February 22nd, 2023. We'll call the order, and Don, would you please read the...
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney. Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Ms. Gayhart.
I'm here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Grinberg.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mr. Reeds.
Here.
Ms. Madriga. Quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. The next order of business is to approve the minutes of January 25th, 2023. They have been distributed. They're on page 3.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Carlson. It's been moved to approve the minutes of January 25th, 2023. Is there a second, please?
Peterson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It has been presented to you.
Peterson, motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Is there a second, please?
Carlson seconds.
Mayor Carlson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 on the agenda is the approval of the bills. It is on page 6 of the packet, and we'll call on Ms. Terry Gayhart for that report.
The total bills received through February 14th total 2.7 million, the largest of which is from Clay County for 1.2, Cass County nearly $900,000, and $400,000 from the city of Fargo, among others.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the finance report, or the bills report, excuse me? None? May I have a motion, please? Thank you, Commissioner Grinberg. Is there a second, please?
Peterson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Been moved and seconded. Don, would you please call a roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Steen. Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you,
Tina's a
Don.
yes. I just didn't hear you got cut off.
That's Mr. Steen
Mayor Mahoney, yes.
and the mayor. Item number 5 is a finance report. Again, we call on Ms. Terry Gayhart. It's on page 19 in the packet.
As of January 31st, the diversion had a total of $182 million in assets, 2.6 in liabilities, with a net position of $179,428,919.
Thank you, Ms. Gayhart. Are there any questions on the finance report? Commissioner Grinberg.
Oh, we'll have a question just for re-entry from the new guy here. Deferred revenue of $11,500. What is that?
Ms. Gayhart.
I can't answer that question at this time, but I certainly could get you an answer.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Anyone, staff, anyone? Oh, okay. Any additional questions? May I have a motion to approve the finance report, please? With the exception of Mr. Grinberg's question, which Ms. Gayhart will get back to.
Peterson, motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Is there a second, please?
Second, Carlson.
Mayor Carlson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the finance report. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 6, Executive Director's Financial Report. Call on Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Chairman Dardis. I'll start with the annual revenue status.
And obviously, this is our first report for 2023. You can see we were in receipt of $7.1 million for the City of Fargo sales tax, and about close to $3.6 million for a total of just under $11 million for the month of January.
All right, questions? All right, please continue.
Okay, and we'll start with our level 1 status here of our different categories. And just for the committee's reference, our cash budget for this year is $226.5 million. This month, we had costs to date of $11.1 million. You can see the P3 channel. I'll get into that cost in a second. But a majority of our costs were contained within the third-party mitigation MOUs. And then about $1.5 million, $1.6 million for City of Fargo River Stage 37 projects. And then, of course, our engineering costs for the month, and a little bit in the lands and impacted property mitigation. I don't think we got the cast joint reimbursement this month, so that's why that's not as high as what we would probably expect. But there is a lot of activity going on there, and we'll probably see that reflected in next month's costs. So I'll dig into level 2 and then take questions from any of the board members. And again, just want to highlight the channel P3, and that's really related to the management of RRBA and the work that was done with Jacob's staff and Onstead Twitchell's staff. And then we'll go down to North Dakota, Minnesota River Stage 37. There you can see a majority or all those costs were contained within the City of Fargo projects that had payment due probably towards the end of last year that showed up on our ledger here in January. Move to the next slide. And again, nothing out of the ordinary here. Engineering costs are consistent with what we were expecting. Program management fees as well, and diversion authority operations. They're in the middle lines. I do want to draw your attention to the $500,000 under DA construction contingency. And this committee remembers that we were directed by the Corps of Engineers to have some different criteria than what we had originally had in the project agreement for the Maple River Aqueduct, and that resulted in design changes for our P3 developer, and they did file a compensation claim, and we did approve that and move forward with that $500,000 payment. And then we'll move to the next page. Just really want to highlight here the third-party MOUs. There's an awful lot of work going into all of the MOUs we have with utility owners and getting utilities relocated, both in the upstream mitigation area as well as the channel itself. And you can see, obviously, a lot of work on our legal team to put those MOUs and manage those MOUs and move forward. A lot of this is related to the BNSF bridges that we've been putting a lot of work in. And so with that, we had total costs this month of $11.1 million. And I'll open it up for any questions that the committee might have.
Questions for Mr. Paulson? Commissioner Peterson.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Paulson and team, did we get resolution to engineering reimbursements? I know there's some dialogue regarding inflating their hours, et cetera. Is that resolved?
Yeah, I think there's maybe one or two consultants that I'm still working with, Commissioner Peterson, but for the most part, a 3% increase was agreed to with the majority of our consultants.
Obviously, we're into March, pretty close, right? Are we going to have resolution to that sooner rather than later for the remaining two?
Yes, I believe we will. Most of them are related to consulting services with our land agents and land firms, but we'll get there. It's not a matter of not being able to come to compromise.
Yeah,
it's just been a procedure. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Thank you. Additional questions from Mr. Paulson? Please continue.
Okay, we'll move into the Diversion Authority Operations Report out. So you can see we had about $134,000 in costs this last month, broken down between salary, benefits, office, and others. So certainly open to any questions related to this as well.
Any questions? All right, please continue.
Okay, and that is my report out for this month, Chairman Dardis.
That continues. Anything else that you have, item number 7?
I can move on to item number 7.
Please do.
Yes, okay. All right, this month, we have a couple cash budget change requests to talk about with the committee and look for action on this item. The first item here is a $30,000 budget request for grant research. Really, this is related to grant research for recreation purposes. We've been receiving a lot of questions from the public, questions from the state of North Dakota about what the authority is doing related to recreation for the program. As the committee members know, there aren't any plans to do any recreation associated with the project, and there's no money available to do recreation with the project. The concept really here is to be able to look at grants that would allow some level of funding and also use this budget increase to come up with some ideas that could be related to any revenue that we would be in receipt of for recreation purposes. The state is very interested in ideas that they could do, perhaps a state park, perhaps other opportunities. And as of this point, I've been reluctant to use any resources because I have not been directed by the Board of Authority to do so. So I'll maybe leave it at that and let any sort of discussion or questions that you guys may have.
Any questions? Anyone? Please.
And Mr. Chair, just a quick question. And I understand this is just a $30,000 scope of work, and I know this has been an area of interest, obviously for the Fargo Commission. Could this be an item that the Fargo Commission and the Cass Commission could work together on and kind of treat that as a local project or a local element, just because I know there's been a lot of interest. I know we have one of our commissioners too that spent some time talking to the governor. I think this might be one that could certainly be led locally, on the North Dakota side. So just a thought. Put that up.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought, Mike, and I would really, advise that any sort of discussions we do around recreation would be in partnership with our member entity partners. This is really kind of getting outside the scope of what the Diversion Authority was made for. However, anything that's going to be implemented out there would have to be in partnership with the authority, in partnership with Red River Valley Alliance. And so there's a lot of complexity to actually implementing something in this project. And perhaps, the grant research could be better done by the City of Fargo staff and Cass County staff who already look into those grants and deal with those agencies. We do have kind of a joint partnership meeting called our Alternative Funding Group. That is led by some members of Jacobs, some members of the authority staff, and then there are member entity staff that are involved in that. That was really kind of the concept here, was to use that group to look for funding, but I think there's a lot of different avenues we could take with this, obviously, and if the city and county were going to kind of lead the effort, I do think the authority staff and some consultants should be involved, just to make sure that we're covering all our bases, and perhaps that staff time could be contained within this budget amendment as well.
Commissioner Peterson.
Mr. Chair, thank you. We don't have a grant writer on staff or anyone that pursues grants, although that's been a dialogue we've been having on a recurring basis, more and more seemingly with every meeting. So something to think about, but we don't have anybody internally that could do this right now. Again, that doesn't preclude us from making that adjustment, because it's not just, our friends in parks now, it's going to be any myriad of other things that we're probably missing out on. And then statewide too, it's a different dialogue too with the Association of Counties. So like I said, right now we don't have anybody, but
Well, I'd argue Mr. Benson is a grant writer, and he's done a great job in the past.
Yeah, Mr.
Mayor
Chairman.
Carlson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, with this 30,000, is this essentially to pay for a staff position to do the research, or is it to apply for a grant that does the research, or can you provide a little bit more specificity in regards to what the funding would be spent on?
Yes, absolutely. So this would be to use to pay our consultants that are members of the alternative funding team. So primarily Jacobs, who does have professional grant writers on staff. Peggy Harder kind of manages that meeting and kind of manages the scope of work of what that team works on. Traditionally, that team was formed to look for additional FEMA revenue dollars for flood mitigation to offset maybe some local sales tax. But it hasn't been really successful. That's kind of the group we use to overturn every rock out there to make sure that we're taking advantage of all federal and potential state programs to provide supplemental income into our financial plan. Not that we need it, everything is covered, but the more federal and state dollars we can use to offset local dollars is kind of the idea behind that. But it has never been tasked to look at recreation grants. So.
Please continue.
If I may, thank you, Commissioner. I guess my response to this would be, I don't necessarily have any concerns about utilizing some funds to look into what possibilities might be out there, but I do really appreciate the thoughts behind the City of Fargo and Cass County then being the lead on it, and the diversion partnering, because it's really not our primary focus or mission, vision, whatever you want to call it, to do the recreational component of this. And I guess if the state of North Dakota is looking at putting in a state park, I would anticipate that they have grant writers and would be able to do that in consulting with the diversion and our consultants to build something like that as it's being built. Our first and foremost task is to build a diversion, not necessarily build a recreational facility. Thank you,
Thank you, Mayor
Commissioner.
Carlson. Any additional comments or questions from Mr. Paulson?
Mayor Mahoney, so Metrocog actually did look at a recreational proponent of the Diversion Authority, and they came out with a $50 million plan, which is rejected when Tony Grenberg was the chair of the Finance Committee, just because it was too expensive. What Joe is referencing is now we do have some extra income because of the sales tax revenue. In the governor's breakfast last Friday, he referenced again if we wanted to do a park in this side. Moorhead in Minnesota would be part of it because the park, basically any kind of recreational facility on this project would be going into Minnesota as well. I anticipate both sides of the river would benefit from this. It's just that in some ways the governor requested that we separate a little bit the diversion authority, because then it looks like Joel is going in as a diversion authority if we go into grant writing and funding to try to figure that out. So if we have the county and the city get involved, and if the city of Moorhead wants Stan Molly involved as well, that to me is fine. It's just to try to separate Joe Paulson from the request if we go after recreational funds. Right now, the state system in the state of North Dakota, I don't know what Minnesota has, but they have money available for state parks. So the agility is to try to jump the county and the city into a seance in which we would request grant funding for the recreational part of the diversion, which would separate from Joel. It would be Mike, and it would be Robert kind of going after that as kind of a separate entity. The state of Minnesota could be part of that, but we're all trying to look at grant funding for North Dakota. Now, I don't know what Minnesota has, Shelley. I don't know if there is money for parks that is separate, because then we should grant right for both sides of the river, because if there's money available with that. But the dream is to have a 30-mile bicycle path starting in Minnesota and going all the way through to the outlet. And the idea is then the different entities, Forest, West Fargo might benefit by having stops or something along the way, but there's no element in Minnesota could also have the starting of a bike path that goes across the river and does all these crazy things. So we're just saying, and talking to Joe Paulson, is let's hire a grant writer to see what opportunities there are, because the state of North Dakota doesn't necessarily want to carve out another 20 or 30 million for recreation right now. But the governor suggests, if the DEA came and asked for it, we wouldn't get it. But if we came to it as county, city, or other entity, we could apply through the park system, and we may well get anywhere from 10 to 20 million. So that's the philosophy that Mike was putting out there. Is how about we just do this to separate a little bit the identity of the diversion from who's asking for it.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. Commissioner Grinberg.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I'm getting reacclimated to where things are at, and this was a discussion when I was on the Diversion Authority prior, so I get that. And I appreciate Commissioner Peterson's point. We don't have a grant writer at the county, and I'm learning the county, roles and duties now as well. But it would seem to me if we wanted to be pure and remove this from the Diversion Authority, the cities and the county should consider putting the money up versus us coming up with 30,000 from the Diversion Authority. I mean, it's one or the other, right? The perception is reality in some cases, and it's a mere 30,000. I get that, and I understand who's asking as well. But just an added comment, I guess, to the point Mayor Mahoney made.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Peterson.
Just to share, I just contacted, our state Parks and Rec director, who's a good friend of mine. They just hired a grant writer, just hired them, and are bringing them through training. He said they have legislative obligations, but, and I'm going to quote you, Cody. I know you're not listening to this, but I've known Cody for a while. He said, "What are you guys thinking?" So that's not a no. So let's just keep that dynamic too, where if we can somehow create a synergy between local and state, that may be prudent. And again, sorry, Cody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Comments, questions on the recreational grant research funding of $30,000?
This is Rick.
Commissioner Grinberg's concern, Tony, the funding is actually, the sales tax is county and city, so we are putting money in, so we're almost double booking if we say, well, let's go out and bump it ourselves. I mean, we're willing to do that, but the reality is that right now with sales tax, we do have extra revenue that we didn't expend. MetroCog did do a study for the Diversion Authority. So following that line, we're just saying, okay, the $50 million wasn't fundable, but is there a different way of doing it? And I think in Joel and my conversation, we do have money available to look at different ideas within the diversion. And to me, it's still the city and county that are funding it because our sales tax is the excess sales tax is what's funding it. So it's kind of double dipping if I go back and take the city and we have to fund it. So in my mindset, it's good for the communities, and we're putting up the money either way.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rick Steen, I believe you had a comment.
Thank you. Yeah, I just thought I was listening here, and I've heard a lot of good ideas what we might be able to do with that land, a bike path and some other ideas. To me, it seems like we should probably define what exactly it is we'd like to do before we go ahead and spend $30,000 on this isn't even a grant writer the way I read this. This is just somebody to research the availability of grants.
Correct.
And it seems to me that we'd want to know what we're going to be doing to find out what grants would be available for that specific project. This might be a kind of a cart before the horse thing, and Commissioner Peterson's comment with regard to the state hiring a grant writer, it seems to me we want to leverage off of that a little bit. And so we might just be a little bit early on in this process. In my mind, is we don't really know what we're doing, but we want to spend $30,000 on something. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond to that, I don't think Rick's completely off base there, but I do think the idea of this 30,000 is also to have some level to have those discussions to say, where do we go and how do we engage in this? So for this committee's knowledge, the authority has not put any effort into this whatsoever, and we don't intend to because we don't have budget to do that. And so this would allow us to kind of dip our toe in the water, I guess, to say, and then allow the ability to have some discussion with the state about opportunities. But if if we don't have any budget or any resources to do that, we will just back off and won't be able to have any discussions about this. And I feel the authority needs to be involved in the discussions because, you know, we're going to be controlling and operating this property, and nothing can be done without integration in with all of the legal authorities that the diversion authority has.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson.
And Joel, to that point, the concern is that if we do it separately as a city and a county, we have to follow the parameters of the DA and the governance of the P3 project. So if you do a study outside of the diversion, then you're not incorporating all those things that we'd have to have as partners. So to me, if it comes from the diversion, then it's more established that you know the legal ramifications of what you come up with. Because if we have an outside agency do it just for the city of Fargo to have knowledge, it doesn't work if we don't have the buy-in from our P3 partners. And we have to have maintenance roads, so what kind of maintenance roads do you have? Do you have maintenance roads with asphalt? Do you have maintenance roads with gravel? Could those be utilizing bike paths? So I think there's a lot of different elements of that that has to be working with the diversion, because otherwise you could come out with a great recreational plan and grant writing, but it wouldn't be allowed because the P3 people would turn it down. So I don't know how you separate that if you don't have a study coming out of the diversion and looking into this with ideas. $30,000 out of a $3 billion project, I don't think it's a lot of money. We get a lot of requests in the public right now to have some kind of recreational part of this project. And I think we've all assumed that the state will not fund this. So if the state's not going to fund it, we have to have a different source of funding. We did talk to the park director, Chad, you were referencing that, and there are multiple grants that West Fargo, Horace, different people can ask for. They're not in the millions, but there are in little bites and pieces that they could qualify for on grant writing. So we could get some of it paid for by just the park system in the state of North Dakota that wants to do a state park and get grant funding. There would come no money out of the diversion on that. Well, you have to look at it to see what you can come up with. But I remember when he first looked at Whitfield when Shockley got into that, he did it a year early and he got it. And he got more money than we ever expected. So it's kind of it's a small amount of money to try to see it. Is there other options to fund recreation?
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. Any other discussion?
One last comment from Rick.
Please.
I was going to use Joel's exact term, dipping your toe into this, and that's kind of the concern is, once you dip your toe into something like this, you're going to take a headfirst plunge, and I think Mayor Mahoney talked about, the state's not going to pay for this, somebody's going to have to. And I can just, in my own mind, without some type of plan ahead in advance, this is going to be a snowball rolling downhill, and the diversion is going to be paying for it. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Additional comments? I'll have you continue with B and C, and
Okay.
then what we'll do is we'll vote on these independently.
Okay, sounds great. The next, so that was considered budget change request number 8. Budget change request number 9 and 10 are both for HMG related to engineering fees. These are related to the design of utility relocates along the southern embankment. The Corps determined that utility relocates is a LERD's responsibility, which is a non-federal sponsor responsibility, which is the diversion authority's responsibility. I'll try not to get too deep into the technical specifics, but the initial indication was that all utilities would be able to be bored under the southern embankment. As they were doing one of the first utilities last year, they started to have what was referred to as fracking of the utility that was being bored underground. And basically, that frack is high pressure fluid coming up out of the ground as a result of the drilling operations, and that gave some concern to the Corps that that would create fissures, create issues with those utilities underneath the southern embankment long term, and so they issued a requirement for us to design the utilities to go up and over the southern embankment. And so a bit more difficult to design that and a lot more coordination. And that is a result in this engineering amendment for HMG to design those utilities up and over the southern embankment. And I'm open for any questions.
Again, question, Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're talking like steel structures to elevate the pipes, the conduit and everything else over the top, or what are we talking about here?
Well, part of this is just coordinating. There needs to be some temporary utilities put in place, and then the Corps will build it, and then the permanent utilities will be designed and put into place. I would anticipate most of these would go up and over the southern embankment, but be still buried utilities. And so they would go up through the freeboard of the southern embankment, or the freeboard would have to be built a bit higher over, depending on what type of utility it is. If it's a water utility, obviously it needs to maintain that buried depth. But it's a lot more coordination. It involves temporary utilities to be put in and removed, and then permanent utilities designed up and over. So it is more costly to do it this way than to directionally drill underneath the southern embankment. And so it was a lot more coordination, let's put it that way.
So if I may continue?
Please,
So
sir.
is this like obviously a 33% increase is fairly substantive, right? Especially on a dollar value of the scale. So is this an hourly not to exceed kind of fee, or is this a percentage fee? How do we get to 33% increase?
So this would be an hourly not to exceed.
That gives me some comfort because, like I said, when you see, I don't mind placeholders. I actually appreciate them because it gives us something to budget off of and think about. But I struggle when the scope changes, but it's all perception, right? It changes, but not to, in my perception, not to that degree. But having it as a placeholder, I'm fine with. But
And I also need to clarify, this scope would have come forward if it was directionally drilled as well. It probably would have been a lower fee than what you're looking at here. But so we've always anticipated this as being a part of what we needed to do. It's just more costly than what we anticipated because of the up and over versus the underneath. So it is expanding these task order budgets, of course, but these are contained within the overall program budget, and so we're not going over budget on any program budget areas. We're just pulling the scope in now because this work needs to be done for the remainder of the southern embankment.
okay, thank you.
I call on Mr. Chris Bacagard, has some data he'd like to share with us.
Yeah, Chair Dardis and committee members, just to add a little more color to what Joel's saying, one other distinction that might help clarify this is one of the other items, when these were directionally drilled, we were anticipating the utility companies would actually just do that work and contract it on their own. So it was not in HMG's budget to do the work. So we also are pulling some work that would have been done by a utility company with their engineering groups. They asked us when we started going up and over and had to coordinate it all with the Corps of Engineers. They asked us to pull that in-house and do the utility designs on their behalf. So that's the other pull that's going on here is we're shifting some budget from what a utility company would have done and pulling it into the DA tasks as well. So that's some of the other changes here are caused by that, along with the explanation that Joel had as well. So.
Commissioner Peterson.
And then presumably the liability as well, right? Because the utility company was doing it independently, regardless of how it turned out, right? It's not our responsibility, but now HMG or our team is taking that liability on, I'm presuming.
The utility will still own the infrastructure when it's all completed. So
But if the design's flawed.
if there's a design issue, then yes, that pulled
Yep.
under our umbrella. But
Yeah,
yeah, we're coordinating those with the utility companies as
They
well.
won't be shrugging their shoulders, I promise. Thank you.
Additional questions? I have a question. With the addition of the $2,176,935, and with the comments that Mr. Bacagard just made that we're pulling, reducing some other bids on to pay for this, what is our net? Do we know a net? The difference between A and B? This being B?
Well, that's a good question, Mayor Dardis. I don't, in regards to the redesign of the utilities, I don't I think we had an anticipated cost, but we never had asked the consultants to come up with a detailed cost estimate, so it might be difficult to compare. But I think the net would be zero, because as Chris had mentioned, if we weren't doing this design, the utilities would be. And I guess we don't know what the utilities would necessarily charge. It may be more than what we're looking at here. It may be less, but the scope itself was transferred, and everything is within the program budget parameters. So we don't have, we've reviewed HMG's scope and the corresponding hours, and we don't have any concerns about what they propose as far as the amount of scope that needs to be done.
All right, thank you. We have Peggy Harder at the microphone.
Yeah, I think Joel answered it very well. If you look at this from a budgeting perspective, our work package 46 is that third-party MRAs and MOUs. So this is just the design portion of taking that design from the utilities, like Joel and Chris explained, and moving it over to HMG to design. So what will also be changing, but we're kind of waiting to see, because we had an idea of what the design cost would be to pay the utility companies to bore it. But now that we're paying them to design this change, as part of that design, they'll come up with new cost estimates over the next few months. And now that, we're giving them through these amendments and this budget change today, the ability to design it, then we can get better cost estimates to see if that design cost, how it changes. And then the other thing that's happening, and you won't see this today, but to help provide clarity over the next few months, it's easier than the Corps is taking on some of this scope as part of their contract package within their work limits. But outside of their work limits, then the authority will lead that work package with their own contractor then to do a bunch of these utility locates at once. So that'll be a future move from the 30-party MOUs to an authority-led work package. It's the only way we could really change it with not being able to directionally drill under the embankment. So we will know better within 2 to 3 months what that exact net change is as far as the design, and we won't know. We didn't get the design fees from the companies, but those construction cost changes that we had originally estimated.
Thank you, Ms. Harder.
Yeah.
Any additional questions on item B? Please continue on item C.
Okay, item C is tied to that as well. It's just a smaller amount in a different task order, so I don't think there's much more to explain there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner, do you have something?
Well, are we going back to the top?
Yes, we're gonna vote on these independently, if that's acceptable to the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I might suggest that we table 8, put it for informational tomorrow's meeting, and have a full diversion authority discussion. I know there are opinions beyond this committee from what I've heard. I don't sense that, since we've been talking about this for 5-6 years, I don't sense that 1 month is going to change the process as far as what's been requested here. I would like to know from a county perspective, outside of leadership on the diversion authority or the governor of the state, what kind of feedback are we getting at the county from rural residents in particular for recreation? So there's some data that suggests that this is really being more broad spread as far as interest in this. And then also I'd like to know if there's excess sales tax, I'd like to know what that number is, because it sounds like there's an urgency or a sense to want to start spending excess sales tax. And that's, as a new member back to the committee, concerning if we're already looking at using unobligated or excess sales tax. And I think the projections were, when we put our model together, was at 1.5% sales tax growth. I assume that's been steadfast in the modeling. So what's the number that's excess? So I just think there's a lot more information that should be shared and discussed. And then ultimately, if there's a specific request for the 30,000, let's put it in writing, and let's have some kind of a quasi plan to get to Commissioner Steen's point.
Well, we need to get you a report that was done in December, I believe, that shows that exact, it's a bar graph of what our expenses are, where we're at, and as well as the sales tax collection for revenues. And it's very healthy, but it's a great chart to review. So we'll make sure you get that. Mr. Paulson.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
One moment, Mr. Paulson first.
I was going to put my John Shockley hat on because he wasn't here, but John Shockley's on the phone, so I'll let you take this, John.
Mr. Shockley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to clarify something for the meeting. There's not really, the way the project finances are set up, there's not necessarily excess sales tax in the sense that we have an exact number. Remember, all of the sales tax is pledged for the project and repayment of the debt. And it would be not prudent to say it's excess sales tax until you're completed with the project and you know exactly what your debt repayment is. And there's certainly, it's exceeding projections, but I would caution that sales tax is much like waves. You have highs and lows, and the way the finance plan was built is to make sure that we can survive both the highs and the lows. And so we're running ahead of projections, which is great. But I would just caution that, as Joel had indicated, there's not really a budget for additional park or rec facilities. Certainly we have some contingency available for like the $30,000 additional study, things like that. But if we were to create a new line item, we would have to figure out how to finance that. And certainly defer to Joel on any of the policy questions regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley.
John, Mayor Mahoney here. John, I just gave a talk recently in which the Diversion Authority provided me documents that's projected a savings of anywhere from 200 to 400 million right now on the project. So to say we don't have $30,000 to look into this, and the $30,000 is looking for other opportunities to get money. It's not opportunities to get money from the Diversion Authority. So Commissioner Grinberg's, our sales tax will run 12 to 14%, 20% higher than we projected in our first pro forma. This is just, we're going to spend 30 grand to see if there's grant writing that we can find money elsewhere and not find it in the state of North Dakota, not find it in the county or city's coffers. So we would find it elsewhere. To me, it recurrently comes up, this recreation issue. Had a request by one of our board members to look into it. I think you guys, at $30,000, come on guys, this is peanuts to a $3 billion project. And if we found grant writing to make us be able to build ability to have recreation, some people have suggested that. When Commissioner Grinberg talks about having a sense of the county, MetroCog is the one that says the community really wants to have recreational facilities. So to me, the proof is there. We're just saying, hey, you want to spend $30,000 to see if we can find a grant writer. And if we choose not to do a diversion, then the city of Fargo will pay for it. But it's just an attempt to find other elements. We recently went to Bismarck. The governor said to us, look into it. We have legislators that tell us to look into it. So this isn't something, I mean, it looks like we're really pitching pennies if we're trying to save 30 grand over a concept of just looking to see if there's available money that we can fund it outside of the state of North Dakota. And Red River Valley Project, I look for grant writing all the time. Can the feds pay more money? This is something that I think makes smart sense.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? We're back on discussion on any of the items, if in general, if you would like. We have a suggestion on item A. I don't have a motion, so again, what's your pleasure?
I'd move items 9 and 10.
Excuse me?
I'll move items 9 and 10 to clear some of the deck here.
Peterson, second.
I have a motion on B and C, number 9 and number 10, on the budget movements, and that is the engineering and design for HMG and an engineering and design for HMG. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move number 8 be tabled with further discussion, and then at the point where a decision will be coming back to the Finance Committee, there'd be a written outline and a plan with some kind of documentation on what the goals would be.
Mr. Chair, point of order. I think we need
Please.
a roll call on the prior because it's an allocation of resources.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. So we're going back to items B and C, And at the advice of Chairman Peterson, we're going to do a roll call vote. So Don, would you please call the roll? Again, we're only on B and C, which is 09 and 010.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Steen. Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Mr. Chair, in an attempt to move things along with the discussion, I'd move we table this for further discussion for tomorrow at the Diversion Authority, and that at what point we'd come back to request an approval, there'd be at least a 1 or 2 page memorandum outline of what the high-level goals were going to be, rather than just a verbal. So we'd have some kind of documentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Grinberg. Is there a second, please? Commissioner Peterson seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we put item 08, recreational grant research funding, that we table it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
No.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Steen. Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
No.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
That is everyone. We have 2 names.
Yes, I apologize. My
Item
voice
08 has,
got deep there.
the motion passes, or thus it's tabled. I'd ask staff to please make that notation for tomorrow's meeting. Moving on to number 8, contracting actions. Again, Mr. Polson.
Oh, thank you, Chairman Dardis. So I had 2 contracting actions for the committee to consider. The first one is really a result of our internal audits. So we audit all the contracts on a reasonable basis. And we found some changes that needed to be made in the master service agreement with Brown Intertech for geotechnical engineering. Really very minor, no costs associated with this contracting action, but it's really an update to their master service agreement to make it consistent with our standards. Let's put it that way. So, and maybe I'll go into the second one, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Okay. The second one is Task Order 101 Amendment 6, and this is really related to our previous discussion about the cash budget increase. So this is adding the scope of work through a task order amendment with HMG. And you'll notice this estimate is higher than what we just increased the budget. That is because there was some remaining budget already contained within their task order. So we utilize that on top of the budget change request that you just approved for this task order amendment. So certainly open to any questions.
All right. Questions for Mr. Paulson on item number 1 or number 2 under 8, contracting actions? We can handle these separately or together. What's the pleasure of the Finance Committee?
I would move to approve both of them at the same time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Carlson, is there a second, please? Commissioner Grinberg seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the contracting actions, item number 1, Brown Intertech, and item number 2, HMG, as presented. Any discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Steen. Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Thank you, Don.
Ron.
Moving on to item number 9, other business. The first item is a BNSF Railway Land Acquisition Directive. We're going to call on Mr. Chris Backergaard for this. It's on page 61 in the packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, we've reached a semi-milestone here. Something we've been working on since I started with this program was acquiring land for the BNSF right-of-way on our project near Horace. We, as the directive states, we're ready to purchase a portion of that right-of-way. It's about half of it that we have approval for from BN. There's the other half is in their state statute process that they have to follow as far as disposing of abandoned rights of way. So as you see if you look at the maps attached, there's 4 tracks on our survey that we're purchasing now. Tracks A and B encompass the channel portion of the project. Tracks F and G encompass an area up by the CHS elevator, which is another purchase we've been working on as well for the last couple of years. So with this purchase, it will allow us to close and give Red River Valley Alliance access to our channel right away, which was certainly our primary mission on this task. It also will allow us to close with CHS and allow them to move their facilities out of Horace and into a new facility. So we're asking today for approval for the $1.2 million plus or minus purchase, which again is about half of the project right away, or the BNSF corridor right away that we need to close and get the access to the channel. We do have this in our cash budget. We have had a few meetings about this in the past, so we do have the purchase of this in our cash budget for the year. This is just asking and giving Cass County Joint the directive to go ahead and close with BN and sign the purchase agreements.
Thank you, Mr. Buckergard. Questions? Any questions from Mr. Buckergard? Committee, what's your choice here? It's an actionable item. Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Chair, if you're looking for a motion to approve, I would approve with some glee that this has been resolved. And I'm sure our friends in Horace are probably, I hope our friends in Horace are satisfied as well, because I think this will be a benefit to them, as this thing has just been sitting idle for X years. So, motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Grinberg. It's been moved and seconded for the approval of $1.2 million for the BNSF right-of-way purchase for parts needed in the city of Horace. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Steen. Ms. Gayhart.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reitz.
Thank you, Don. Motion passes. Is there anything from any of the finance members that would like to bring forward at today's meeting? Anyone? Mr. Paul Barthol is up there, but microphone, Paul?
I actually have an answer for Mr. Grinberg's question from earlier.
Thank you, sir.
That deferred revenue is based on rental property, and we had one property owner that paid multiple years, and so it is deferred. He paid 2022, 23, and 24, and so that income is deferred until 2024 till we can count it.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else from the Finance Committee have anything that they'd like to bring forward this afternoon? Our next meeting is going to be March 22nd. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.